Hi, my name is James Shepard with CC BizProbe, and today I want to talk to you about 2 ways that you can beat the banks in Canada. Now, the Canadian merchant services market really has one objection that is so much more prevalent than any other objection that it's almost the only one that matters. And that is, how do I beat the banks? The 5 major banks, they're in Canada, 2 of the major ones being Moneris and TD Canada Trust. They really have kind of a stranglehold on merchant services there in Canada. And so the majority of the people that you talk to, they're small business owners that are processing payments, they're with their bank. They're with the Royal Bank of Canada, which is through Moneris, or they're with Canada Trust, which is through TD. And so they have these huge payment processing platforms in place that already have the majority of the market. Really, the 5 major banks in Canada have a huge percentage of the market. And really, just in the last few years, merchant services companies like ours and others have really kind of infiltrated the market and started to offer some unique solutions. But still, the objection that you're going to hear more often than not is, I'm with my bank, I don't want to switch, okay? So let's talk about how you can beat the bank. And I just want to give you 2 tips today that I believe that you have to understand if you want to beat the banks in Canada. Number 1 is you have to learn to separate. You have to learn to separate. Let me explain what I mean by that. The banks in Canada have done a tremendous job at really consolidating everything, and what they've done is, in the mind of the small business owner, they've really placed merchant services with banking. In other words, you have to understand that in the mind of your prospect, merchant services and banking are kind of the same thing. It's all part of the same thing. It's like a deposit that they make at the bank, it's just that it comes through their credit card machine. And so for them, the idea of separating merchant services from banking is kind of scary. They've never done that before. They may never have even thought about that before. They don't want to separate those 2. They just want to stay with their bank and keep them together. So you have to educate your client on how easy and simple and seamless this process really is. For instance, one of the great things that I believe you can do is educate your clients about how this process really works. The Royal Bank of the Royal Bank of Canada, they do not totally control the processing. They work through Moneris, okay? And so Moneris has simply partnered with the bank and kind of aligned with them and works closely with them to process the transactions and get them to their bank account quickly. But you can explain to them that, hey, look, if you're processing with us through our processing partners, what we can do is really the same thing. It's not like it would be really any different. You would have a different processing company instead of Moneris, but you would still be banking with the Royal Bank of Canada or TD Canada Trust. You would still bank with your bank. You would just use our credit card processing machine. The money goes directly from the machine right into your bank account. So it's not like there's any hold on the money or really anything different at all. It's just that we're depositing the money to your bank account instead of Moneris, okay, or instead of TD. So you have to understand that, again, the number 1 kind of objection that your prospects have in their mind, even if they don't say this, but the number 1 objection is that they're a little bit nervous to take credit card processing away from the bank, primarily for 2 reasons. 1, they feel like it's a big risk for them to do that because what if you screw something up? So you better be ready to defend your company that you're selling for and talk about what that processor has to offer, etc. So you got to be ready to defend your position and your company's reputation. But secondly, they're also concerned about their relationship. So it's reputation and relationship. They're worried about the relationship with their current bank. In other words, in their mind, if they can't, for instance, let's say you had a small pizza shop in Montreal, and you had, let's say you had the, TD Canada Trust is doing your processing for you, but let's say that bank also gave you a small business loan of $100,000 to start your pizza shop. Well, you're going to be concerned, hey, if I switch my credit card processing, does that mean that I'm going to damage my relationship with the bank and potentially hurt my opportunity for future loans and things like that? And so you just have to educate the small business owner that, look, the merchant services all over the world, it's a separate service. Now, the banks have added it on as something that they offer, and that's great. But again, you have to understand it's an add-on. It's something separate. Moneris is not owned entirely by the Royal Bank of Canada. It's a separate platform or entity, and so you have Moneris doing the processing and depositing it into the bank. So you have to explain to your potential client that you got to separate these things out, and so it's always going to be there's always going to be benefits when you separate these two things. So number one, you have to separate. You have to understand that that's the objection that your prospects have. Number two is you have to differentiate. You have to differentiate. If you go in there and your only pitch is, well, we're a little cheaper, that's not going to do it, because they don't care about just a little bit cheaper, because this is they feel like it's a big risk for them. It's really not, but in their mind it's a big risk for them to change from their bank to go to you. So you have to understand that you've got to differentiate. Now I have really three different things I'll mention to you briefly of how can you differentiate so you can beat the banks. Number one would be free equipment. Now, in the Canadian market, all of the banks are either leasing or renting the terminals. And so one thing that our program offers is a free credit card machine. Very unique in the Canadian market. Again, something to differentiate, something that's going to, kind of set you apart. And you could even ask your potential client, and say, I notice you have a terminal right there. Did the bank give you that terminal for free, or did you have to rent it, buy it, or lease it? And normally they'll tell you they had to lease it, or sometimes they had to rent it. And you can say, well, one of the really unique things about our program is that what we do is we actually give you a free credit card machine that you can use as long as you're processing with us, okay? And so again, that's something that is going to differentiate in their mind. By the way, it's also something that will reduce your risk. Okay, so reduce their risk. So when you're trying to make them, trying to get them to change, if they have to buy a new terminal, it makes it a much bigger decision. But if you can get out there and say, hey, we offer a free terminal, suddenly it's not that big of a decision for them. They just are going to have to put this new terminal on the counter. They can try it out. With our program, we do month-to-month agreements, so they're not locked into a long-term contract. So these are all things you can do to differentiate yourself from the competition. Number two, so number one is the free credit card machine. Number two certainly is lower rates. So of course, along with the free terminal, you're also going to need to kind of hold a little carrot out there. And the most effective carrot, once you've got their attention with something that's different, is to say our rates are lower. So you've always got to make sure you're getting that credit card processing statement, sending it into the processor, getting the free analysis so you can show them how much money you can save them, okay? And so the savings is going to be important. You're going to want to offer them a little bit of savings along with that free terminal. That's important. And then finally, number three is sell something different. If you want to beat the banks, you have to play their game, okay? The game that they're playing is they offer banking, they offer, loans, and then, oh, by the way, we also offer credit card processing. So you got to play the same game they're playing. So for instance, with our company, we offer web design. So you might go in there and the customer might say, well, I'm not interested. And you can say, okay, well, let me ask you this. Are you satisfied with your website? Would you like to improve your online marketing? And we can offer them a website. We can offer them online marketing, pay-per-click ads, content creation. So we have things like that. We're working on our point-of-sale system for Canada, which we'll announce soon. So things like that, you can offer them something else that you sell that is going to be of value to them to get your foot in the door. Then you can circle back and say, well, if you're going to use this for your online presence and we're going to be setting up an online store for you, or we're going to use your point of sale, obviously we should also work together on the merchant services, because I'm going to give you a bundled rate and give you a better price, okay? So you want to sell other things kind of like the banks do to allow you to get your foot in the door. Even if it's not something that we sell, maybe it's a gift card program or loyalty program that you found locally, or whatever it is that you find, something that's kind of in an adjacent market that small business owners are going to like, something you can use to get your foot in the door. That can be very beneficial, again, especially with small business owners that start out by saying, no, we're not interested. You can offer them something else and kind of get your foot in the door. So that's my two tips for competing with the banks and beating the banks is separate the services, and you got to differentiate. Again, my name is James Shepard. We're building a team in Canada. We're excited about it. Make sure that you check out our website, ccsalespro.ca, and you can click the link below this video to learn more about joining our team.